So we're having some timing issues, but that's okay. We're going to move right into this particular panel and be handled very gently by Mr. Richard Louie. So let me bring up the esteemed moderator of this panel, the great anchor of MSNBC, Richard Louie. While he's coming, I will say that the way the program is going to work, we're going to do this panel here in this room, and then we're going to immediately jump into the breakouts. So we're going to try to complete this one, if you guys don't mind, in like 25 to 30 minutes. So that's how much time we got.
Thank you so much, Clayton. And this is going to be a great conversation. And I'll introduce them very quickly. Then, if our panelists here, as we look at how broadband has redefined media, that's what we're going to be focusing on in the next 30 minutes. We have until about 3:40. That's how much time he's given us, which I think we can get done, especially with him hanging over behind me right now. You'd think I was at a debate or something, or I don't know. Golly. Who is that guy? Anybody watch SNL? Yeah, there he is. Yep. All right, so I'd like to welcome our panelists. We have Veronica Rodriguez from TIE Inc. We have Albert Thompson from Walton, Isaacson. We have Kobi Wu from VisuWall, and Brandon Andrews, Team Impact. If each of you could give me your bio that's not been written on the website in 2 sentences, that would be great. And we'll start all the way to the far left here with Kobi, right?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kobi Wu. I own a company called VisuWall, and I will, I suppose, get into that in a second. Is that right, Richard?
Yeah, give me your 2 sentences. Like who are you? Who is Kobi?
Oh, well, okay. I come from the agency world. I've worked in creative marketing and experiential marketing for 15-ish years, maybe 20, somewhere in there.
All right, you said it. Yeah.
That's enough, right?
Yep. Mucho.
Having worked with a lot of brands and artists and bridging the connection between how brands should communicate with artists should communicate with brands, and for creating those integrated partnerships.
Fantastic. Veronica, your Twitter profile?
I'm Veronica Rodriguez. I have over 20 years of integrated marketing communications experience. I peg myself as a communications choreographer for brands to communicate with cross-cultural audiences from entertainment, technology, lifestyle, all different categories. And so that's it.
Great. Albert?
So Albert Thompson. I am managing director of digital at a multicultural agency, Walton, Isaacson. In a nutshell, I help companies leverage technology to solve business challenges. Those challenges could be consumer challenges, product challenges, in-market challenges, essentially. Those are my 2 sentences.
You're the challenge meter. You make it work. Brandon?
Hey, Silicon Harlem. Brandon Andrews. Spent about 5 years working in the Senate in D.C. doing tech policy and small biz policy. Now I work at Values Partnerships, and we help a range of companies from OWN to Paramount to Fox, Searchlight to A&E Networks and History engage with communities of color and also with faith communities.
Fantastic. Let's keep all our answers short if we can, around 30 to 60 seconds. That'd be great for me, which probably means it'll be 2 minutes, I'm guessing. Brandon, let's start with the title of this panel, How Broadband Has Redefined Media.
Yeah. It's actually really significant.
Yeah.
Just maybe a month or so ago, YouTube, all of Google's brands kind of have these big one-year conferences where they have tens of thousands of people, etc. YouTube came out and said, we have more hits from folks in the 18 to 49 category than all of the broadcast folks combined in terms of their primetime shows. Now, the broadcast folks immediately pushed back and said, hey, that's not true. We don't agree with the numbers. But I think the reality is media is moving towards more nonlinear models, so more models where you're not watching something at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. And especially when you look at millennials, and I just, to say this really quickly, generally speaking, the way that folks that are buying media, that are doing marketing, the way that they kind of negotiate is with these 2 big blocks, 18 to 49, 25 to 54, and then just about anybody else that they catch, in particular millennials, which happen to be the largest generation, it's kind of a bonus. But millennials are moving more and more away from the linear model. So they're watching Netflix, they're watching YouTube, etc. And so that means that advertisers aren't getting that extra bump that they used to get. So at some point in the near future, I think you're going to see, one, advertisers move towards nonlinear platforms, so using Google Preferred on YouTube and other nonlinear ad products. But then you're also going to see, at some point, I think, millennials kind of have their own category when you talk about buying advertising for media, just because marketers aren't able to get it. So one of the ways that broadband is really changing things is allowing folks to access media, access content in whatever way that they want to access. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means a little bit later, but want to be
Great.
concise.
Thanks. Albert, how broadband has redefined media?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it's democratized and decentralized power. You know, it used to be in the early stages of digital, the portals, AOL, MSN, and a lot of search engines that don't exist anymore, controlled the point of entry.
Yeah.
Now it's user controlled. And discovery by means is the fuel that drives what we live in, this sort of experience economy, what you've done, what you've been, what you've seen, what you know, with technology being essentially the gateway for that. So brands, media companies don't control that anymore. It's user controlled, it's human controlled, it's people controlled, it's controlled by communities. Brands are essentially trying to figure out what is the next based on what people like us in the room are now defining as the next. So when you think about sort of the decentralized power, the next platform is not going to be something that some major conglomerate created. It's going to be something that somebody in their basement created. And then a new business model will essentially emerge on top of that. I think that's just...
What will it be? What will it be? I'm curious. Come on. You can tell us.
Wow. I think when you start to look at companies trying to build businesses around influence in the influencer, and I'm not talking about just at the celebrity level. I mean, someone who has made themselves a tastemaker of some sorts, of some category, of some topic. You're going to start to watch influence be the model for which businesses get built. And celebrity endorsements was just the tip of the sword, but I mean, it could be, you see everything from P&G, from fashion houses, trying to find someone who's going to help create the next storyline, that entry point, that gateway to be authentic and be real. I think when influence goes localized, hyper-local, like who is the influencer on this block, then we're going to see a major shift because all business is still transacted locally within a few miles of the epicenter of a storefront. I think you're going to see influence get that hyper-local and not be some halo effect celebrity that has global power, but someone who has clout within a 5-10 block radius, and that will define a business and their success. And it won't be the top-down model, it'll be a bottom-up model.
Veronica.
Well said. I would say definitely the way broadband has redefined media is instead of reaching for your cup of coffee in the morning, you're reaching for your mobile device or your smartphone. Not only, it's probably about 8 to 10 years ago when smartphones were developed, and thinking back 10 years ago, imagine not having access to everything that you have at your fingertips. And so as in thinking about the way a media company like the one that I work in at Time Inc., content creators and the need for content is uber important. And so you always turn to journalists and those within the field that were trained to develop the content and to tell these stories. And the debate can be whether it's ethical or not ethical. But in thinking about content creators, everyone here in the room has an opportunity to do that and to share your voice. And so broadband has given everyone a voice and is giving them access and is giving them the opportunity to share it and to build communities. And also in thinking about ways to build your own, in thinking about how to subsidize your own income. I mean, plenty of people, especially millennials, have turned to broadband and content to develop their professional lives, and so it's no longer the 9 to 5 or becoming going to school to become an attorney. It's actually using your mind and your creativity and your voice to tell stories. And so companies like a P&G, a Unilever, a Verizon, they're looking for the real person, as they call it, the real person on the street to tell the story. And actually now they're integrating those influencers into their marketing campaigns, because just like our communities, we turn to our family, our aunts, our friends for influence, for advice, and so that's why content and influentials are so important.
So I think there's two ways that that resonate with me. I think broadband has impacted media in the way that it's causing different formats of advertising to kind of find optimization. So I have my platform is an out-of-home platform, but I look at traditional means of outdoor placements. They are looking for that digital opportunity. So now we have these silos of buckets in terms of spending, where people spend on their billboards and whatnot, but then they also will have a separate bucket, not necessarily integrated with their digital and mobile connections with advertising. So there's these two desperate models, and I think that we're trying to find ways now where traditional spending is trying to go to the mobile spending, because they know that that's where people are. And the second point to that is people are able to connect in real time. So it's speeding things up a lot faster, where as you're walking down the street, you're trying to impact them. So to Albert's point, and not for nothing to Veronica's point, we're able to get those influencers literally while they're walking down the street and say, hey, go get that $2 Starbucks, because they got some beacon notification out of nowhere on your mobile device. Go get that $2 Starbucks at 2:00 p.m. and you go do it because you were able to connect. So I think that we're finding ways to optimize that advertising spend.
So what's very interesting about this is, we're talking about broadband and how it's redefining media, is, you think back, and sorry to go back to the first dot-com boom, but the idea was pipes, broadband. We're still talking about broadband now in our second or third cycle, right? But you all four of you brought up the idea of what's going to be the killer app, if you will. It's content, right? What will be the next cycle's wow? Because we know content is king right now, or queen. What will it be in another 10 years? Will we still be using the word broadband?
I would definitely say yes. In thinking about what's next, virtual reality is something that is at least uber king on the content space.
Or queen.
And so, a queen.
No. Gender equality, please.
King and queen. And so in thinking about the virtual reality and bringing consumers into the experience firsthand, imagine experience a football game live, the Super Bowl live,
right,
as if you're there on the ground. And so, yes, I think the conversation will continue, and there is a next right around the corner.
I think, Zuckerberg had termed something called frictionless sharing. That was his vision for Facebook, that at any point in time, you see anything, touch anything, you'll be able to share it, distribute it at light speed. We're going to enter the next era of frictionless connectivity. The bottom line is you'll drop into some ecosystem in some city or some facility, and boom, you'll be communicated with based upon some level of NSA, almost like identification of who you are and who your preferences are.
Yeah.
People just need to realize most of the technology we get is secondhand military anyway. So when you look at other things they're doing, it'll make its way into a commercial application. So if you want to start to look towards the future of that, that's essentially a starting point. But when you start to think about the ability of devices to connect, and broadband being the light switch, it could be as pervasive as literally just electricity. The same way you could get power just by plugging it in, you should be able to drop into a new environment and be connected to however that ecosystem runs. I think that's going to be the next era. The challenge now is it's all in pieces. Everyone's kind of doing their little thing. So everyone hasn't connected.
Very organic.
Yeah. So the date that you can start to, as I say, stitch together the ecosystem, then I think we start to see things move at light speed, and then it'll be essentially another quantum leap.
So let's build on that, and by all means, Albert, Kobi, reflect on what has been said already. But the idea of being able to stitch it all together and to be able to actually categorize it and get the stuff I want, because as content explodes, we've been talking about this. We're going to look at a lot of AI and machine learning sort of progressions and cycles, and because in 10 years we're going to need that, because there's no way that any of us as a consumer, whether it be personal or business, will be able to access that data that's personal to us. Potentially. Talk about that.
Well, I'll definitely start, and I think to echo your point, for those of you that are looking for what might come next, look at the government has a couple of kind of quasi-governmental VCs. Red Planet Capital is one that does investments for NASA. InQtel is one that does it for the CIA and some of the other kind of secret organizations or classified organizations. And so look at what they're investing in if you're looking towards the future for some technology that'll eventually have a commercial use. But to your point, I think what you said again is correct. We have to find a way to create an ecosystem, and something that we see in working with some of these larger media companies is they'll come out with a new and a new piece of content. It'll be really splashy, but then it's, what's next? What do you do with it next? For example, we worked on Roots, which History Channel and A&E reimagined earlier this year, had about 50 million viewers during the first week. I think the first episode had 14 or so million viewers, but getting that initial hit isn't enough. Because the companies are spending a lot of money creating this really rich content, and then two, it's not enough from an advertising standpoint. If you're talking about being able to pay the bills, make a return on your investment as a media company, pay investors, et cetera. And so what we do, and maybe this is something, Clayton, that we could work on together, is we create discussion guides, we create media guides, we create other content to kind of wrap around the initial piece as a way to keep folks engaged and kind of build this ecosystem that, one, gives us a little bit more data and tells us what folks are interested in going a little bit deeper, but then also gives us an opportunity to reuse that content, right, and gives us an opportunity to make sure that folks are staying engaged outside of just going and watching something and then kind of being done with. Same thing with Netflix. I think for those of you who heard earlier, Keith Cleanscale said he, went through Luke Cage in a matter of hours. And so the question is, what do you do after that? If you're Netflix and you spend all this money on this incredible content, but folks are going through it in 3 to 5 hours,
Good point made. Kobi, any reflections?
I have to give a little bit of context. I'm sorry if this sounds like a sales pitch, but just to kind of give you some perspective, my company is basically, I aggregate all the commercial real estate I can get my hot little hands on. And I use that as a footprint to present to advertisers. And I say, hey, your billboards are great and they look fantastic up there, but let's bring them down to eye level. And then I ask them to put their advertising in window. Stop. Pause. Then the next thing is I put in technology, it's sensors that count the traffic, foot traffic, car traffic, and I'm able to tell you how long it takes someone to walk past a window. I'm able to tell you if they're even looking at it, right? And that's interesting for advertisers from an ROI, like what's the actual connection that you're making. But I'm finding as I talk to more and more advertisers, the things that they want are, I want to know is how many male, how many female. I want to know what age they are. I want to know if after they walk past and they see the campaign, will they come back and what's the conversion rate? How do I get them in the store? How do I get them to connect on mobile? Because that first connection isn't enough. There is that call for a longer extended relationship or a repeat relationship, if you will. So I think that's the right direction in what we're talking about, being able to connect with people in a real way. And then once you have the Luke Cage fan, being able to message them in another way. Maybe it's through a commerce way, or maybe it's through a snippet of conversation way later. But just that kind of resonance that continues on for several months or even years.
There certainly is an opportunity for that binge watcher, which we all take on that quality at certain points. We're going to get to questions just 2 or 3 minutes. I did this earlier. From all your big brains up here, and you don't need to talk long, just give me the number that you're watching, the data point you're watching when you think about the future of broadband and how it's redefining a media. What number? What data point you watching?
So I was on a panel with Oracle once, and they said one of the smartest things I'd ever heard. They were like, who you are is represented best by where you go and where you spend your money.
Where you spend your money?
Yes. So if you think about what the government does when they track people down, they look at credit card transactions, says where you are, you look at your whole history, they map your whole life in like 10 seconds. And it's a TV show. So when you think about that, and very much to her point, the new data, beyond panel data, this is Nielsen MRI, is going to be physical footprint. Think about how much ground you cover virtually, but physically, especially if you're in a busy household. It's a lot. Brands will want to know, where did they go? What were they doing there? What do they spend their money on? And what's the pattern behind that? Because that says everything about their lifestyle. So,
Action and emotion.
right.
Action
So
and emotion.
it is the place visit data, to me, that's going to be the new data conversation.
Gotcha.
Because once Visa starts selling
Starts?
transaction data
Starts? I
at
don't know.
scale,
Yeah, at scale, okay.
at scale,
All right.
then it's going to be a new layer for which they're going to understand what you're doing out there, and that changes everything for businesses.
Quick number. What number are you watching?
I feel like we all know that they're currently doing that. I think the conversation can evolve into privacy issues. I think that companies are definitely going in, they're getting the data, but consumers are actually getting very smart, and they're reluctant to include that much information, so they're creating pseudo profiles.
What's the number you're watching? What's the data point you're watching for the future?
I need to understand the question a little more. Data point. In
Yeah,
regards to
you might be.
speed, in regards
He
to-
was talking about where folks are spending, the actions they're spending. That's the number he's watching. The data that might come out. What's something that tells us about the future?
Content creation on my end is
The amount of
type,
content?
the amount and the type of
Amount and
content,
type.
and how or whether it's organic
Got it.
or how deep it would go.
Gotcha. Albert, you were itching. Not Albert. Brandon, you were itching to pick up your microphone earlier. What's the number you're watching?
I'm honestly just going to end where I began. I think the move towards nonlinear viewing, and in particular, millennials moving towards nonlinear viewing, means that at some point there's going to be an assumption that most people are viewing it nonlinear, which means that, and I guess the question for Silicon Harlem is, once that assumption is made, what does that mean for folks in our communities that don't have equitable access to broadband? Once the assumption is made that most people or everyone is watching this way, what does it mean, Clayton, to your point about there being internet-only information? There's going to be internet-only content, internet-only media. What does that mean, and how can we address that?
Yeah, and once you turn on the faucets, for instance, here, North 96, there's a whole part of creativity we have not accessed yet. It is completely untapped, and unfortunately we have these spaces across the country. And I think when we talk about redefining media, we don't know yet what is about to be redefined. I'll let Kobi get her number in there real fast.
I think it's just conversion. How many people are actually connecting, not just looking, but they're doing something afterwards.
Yeah.
If they're going in the store and they're purchasing, or they're tuning in to watch.
Okay, so I'm going to get to questions now, but I cannot but comment here when we talk about redefining media, looking at the four of your young, shiny faces here in front of our panel, is that we don't often get to see this. You know, when I do stuff like this in the tech world, I don't see faces like yours. Is this an indication of how broadband has redefined media, seeing leaders like you out there, and how do we do more of this? Any commentary from you?
Yeah, I'll definitely, Clayton. I feel like Harlem's a second home now because I can, come up here and hang out with you guys anytime. I'm definitely always available if you guys are working with schools, teachers, etc. If folks are interested in having, a career working with big brands, working in media, definitely happy to be helpful. Yeah.
A lot of the work that I do is working with tech companies, with Google, and with Facebook, and some of the other large organizations and technology organizations to build, to go internally and help build their diversity and inclusion structure. And part of that not only is their talent and retaining talent, but going out and recruiting. And so I think that's a lot of the work that I'm doing that I'm very passionate about, that I actually am able to do that professionally. So it's definitely something that...
Yeah. Great. Okay, I want to get to questions. And you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Just have a couple of
Go for it.
points. I understand that, and you covered a lot of this in your
Go quickly, my friend. Go quickly, please.
I am.
Yep. Actually, I have a mic for you.
This one works okay.
Well, this one here. She can have her mic. I'll hold this. I'll hold this for you. Go ahead. Ask your question.
All right. There are components of broadband that is not really talked about in large measure. Things like ultra-fast broadband and what that means and how it's going to change the ability of people to do things on the internet, and i.e., I was at a conference not long ago and someone said that Nike is redefining its business. It's not going to be doesn't want to be thought of as a sneaker or an apparel company, but as a digital company, because now you can put sensors and chips in, sneakers. They can report to your physical trainer or your doctor or whatever. Anyway, I just want you to think in terms of that kind of thinking, data center technology, what it means to have things up in the cloud and the ability to do things faster and better and have it as a service as opposed to having to own it. And how does that affect media and what is that going to do in terms of what you guys do in terms of trying to get people to respond, to the market?
Great. Don't answer that yet. I got two more questions over here. You have a question, right?
Yeah, could you speak to the aspect of redlining and data caps in relation to broadband media? I mean, you have this whole thing with your cell phones, and I pay $180 a month to ensure I still have the old plan, so I can burn through 40 gigs a month, but I'm atypical. And we're in Harlem here, and a friend of mine said he has the Reagan Lifeline phone. He doesn't want the new one. So, it's a true story.
And a question back here really fast.
I'm Taylor, and in terms of advertisement, is it possible that in the future advertisements could get information from your history and your personal name and then use voice samples to say, hey, Jonathan, do you want this pet food for your dog? And should that happen because privacy is becoming more important?
Okay, there you go. All four of you, go ahead. Pick and choose.
So, just to start with her question.
I thought you would. Yep, you better.
That sounds like a Tom Cruise movie that's been seen over. So yes, all that technology exists. Right now, some of it's just too expensive that's commercialized. But facial recognition technology is one of the last ones will make its way probably into New York City first, because you guys have all the street cameras. So when you start to look at the idea of pinging your device, which will download data based on preferences, because everybody's on Facebook. It'll connect to that in milliseconds with facial recognition, with gesture that will come. The answer is yes. The question is around the control of our own privacy settings and what control we will be given and not given, and to what degree that technology, hopefully by machine learning, is smart, so it's not intrusive, and it's not abusive in its way that it connects with us, but does in more of an ambient way. There's a lot of push for ambient connectivity that you don't so much feel, but presents itself. It's kind of like you're on a conference call in New York City. There's always an ambulance rolling by. There's always a siren. That's the ambient sort of connectivity. So that's going to be a huge push, but the success of that has everything to do with whether the notion you point out is something we can live with or something that we resist.
Great. Anybody else want to reflect on any of those three questions, comments?
There is a program that's out there right now called Radar, and it's a kind of a combination between Clear Channel and AT&T. And Senator Chuck Schumer actually challenges this business because they say, hey, what Radar is allowing you to do is saying, okay, there's billboards, traditional billboards that are connected with AT&T, and they're able to identify AT&T users as they walk by and ping them specific messages. Not dissimilar from what VisuWall does, but because it's AT&T, we know who the cell phone user is. Chuck Schumer says that that's not okay. That's invading people's privacy because you should not have to be able to be identified just walking down the street. So there's certain rules and regulations that the city would have to lift if they're going to allow people to actually see, because it can be done. To Albert's point, it can absolutely be done, but should it be done? And that's just, I think, an ethical question.
Thank you. And any other reflections from the other two questioners, commenters?
Yeah. So to your point here, and really to the points that all three of you kind of raised, I think we've got to have more entrepreneurs coming from our communities. I lead a nationwide casting tour for Shark Tank. I'm focused on bringing more diverse entrepreneurs onto the show. Had a casting event here in Harlem a couple years ago, and I think awareness of the technology that's out there, awareness of the trends, and then a push from Silicon Harlem and from others around the country to push entrepreneurs to start businesses with this leading edge technology is going to, one, ensure that our communities are aware of it, but also ensure that there's cultural competency there. The brother over here and I were talking about cultural competency earlier, but ensuring that the cultural competency is there so that our communities aren't taken advantage of by these technologies and by these companies, because the companies are going to be founded. The question is whether they're going to be founded by entrepreneurs that are culturally competent, entrepreneurs that care about the community enough to make sure that we don't get abused in the process. And also want to give a shout out to my sister over here. It is October's National Women's Small Business Month, and any other female entrepreneurs. Shout out to you all for the incredible work that you guys are doing.
Well done. Well done. Any comments about data caps before Clayton shuts us down?
You feel me, don't you?
I don't know. I got a sense, sixth sense. Data caps? Quickly, somebody?
What was the question again? Sorry.
They feel me too.
Yeah.
Think about data caps in relation to broadband. It's defined differently. We're basically going to get broadband at a point where everybody else already has it, but then they're trying to turn down the pipes right now. And for instance, limit your time warner access in North Carolina to 300 gigs a month.
Yeah. Well, within communities of color, data shows we over-index in mobile usage, in data usage. What I do encourage, and I know that is being done now, is really putting the pressure on your local, state, and federal government leaders, because the power behind the numbers, your usage, and the money, to your point, that you're paying every day, that gives you an opportunity, or you're paying into a certain amount, you have to put the pressure on government for that. I think that we had someone representative here who has a voice, but it's super important not to be apathetic. And I think when you talked about redlining, it's something that we can't sit dormant. We have to continue and forge forward. It's super important, and organizations like Silicon Harlem partnering up with other organizations across the nation is important, because the data caps will, as they shared, we're not there yet, and the usage continues to grow, and so it has to be fair and equitable across the board. And so
Thank
make
you.
your voice heard.
Yes, really quickly, Senator Ron Wyden actually has a bill addressing data caps and addressing equity, and so if anyone here is interested, one, you can Google Ron Wyden data caps and it should come up, but two, I'm happy to talk to you about it after.
What a great panel. Thank you all for how broadband has redefined media. Thank you.
Deep. These are great thinkers. Definitely stay where you are. We're going to keep it moving here. We're a little bit behind schedule.